Let's talk about some of the action from the past 48 hours, because on Tuesday night, Millwall ended Portsmouth's unbeaten run at Fratton Park by beating them 1-0. And we were just saying on Sunday, Justin, how Pompey have been like Real Madrid at home this season. So well done to Millwall. You've beaten Real Madrid.
I think if any team's got the credentials to beat Real Madrid and pull off an upset, it's Millwall. I say with a question mark. I just feel like... Just
instantly doubting your own claim there midway through the sentence.
Because I'm sure people will hear that statement and sentence and be like, what is he on about? But actually, I think... Just focusing on that for a moment, I do think Millwall have, amongst above anybody else other than like your Liverpools and your Man Cities, I think Millwall are the next team in line who I think have got the ability to beat Real Madrid. The only reason I say it is because I think the bigger the club, the uglier Millwall play and the harder it is to come up against them. And I think that will be very uncomfortable for Real Madrid.
Okay. Maybe Justin's been partying a bit too much in the past 24 hours again. But it's, of course, a bit of a surprise result, really, considering how good Portsmouth have been at Fratton Park and on the balance of play. They'll probably be annoyed that they couldn't produce more chances than what they did here. They could have also lost this by more, though, if it wasn't for a miss of the season contender by Millwall's Reece Bangura-Williams, which looks worse and worse the more I've seen it. But look, Millwall's goal did come from Mihajlo Ivanovic. He's their Serbian striker, who they spent £2.5 million on in the summer. Had scored just twice in 18 league games, but has now got 2 in 2. So took his goal really well here, Justin. Looks to be finding his feet finally at Millwall. Yeah,
it's worth pointing out that the assist came from Bangura-Williams as well, so he did make amends in some ways. It was a beautiful pass as well, but it was a bad miss. But yeah, Ivanovic, I have been impressed with him in the cameos that I've seen in play. I think you got to bear in mind that he's still just 20 years old. He's still developing, but when you look at his goal here against Portsmouth and how well he took it, with a defender on his back, the goalkeeper closing the angle, and the deftness and the composure of the execution of I wouldn't say a chip, it's more of a lift, I think was wonderful and a good highlight of what he can bring quality-wise. And I think, as I say, you just remind yourself that he's 20 years old. It was a surprise to see Millwall put that much money on someone who isn't ready for first-team football. We have seen that this season. He's not quite ready, but he is getting better. And I think, if he keeps pulling up with goals like he did against Luton, which was a beautiful hit, and obviously a goal the goal here against Portsmouth, then yes, Millwall can slowly rely on him, because I think the quality that they've got at the moment is very, few and far between.
Yeah, well, Millwall need someone to step up as well, don't they, going forward with Romain Essa leaving? It's obvious what the main issue is for Millwall. They've got the best defensive record outside the top 6, but they've scored the 3rd fewest goals in the division this season. So someone like Ivanovic, hopefully coming to the fore, will be huge. And Millwall obviously saw a lot in him for them to fork out what was a lot of money by Millwall standards. Yeah. And we have started to see why they forked out that much recently, with 3 very well taken goals. The one against Portsmouth, that sort of Travers volley against Luton at the weekend, and then of course the greatest header of all time when he scored it lying on the ground in the FA Cup the other week. So hopefully this is the start of things to come with him. And so a great result for Millwall, not a great one for Portsmouth, Justin. That's because we've spoken at length about how big the contrast is between their home and away form. They've been appalling on the road recently, so whenever they don't pick up a good result at home, obviously not ideal.
Yeah, I think this is the pressure that they put on themselves, isn't it? Just what we've been speaking about over the past couple of episodes, in that Portsmouth are so good at home and they're so poor away that because they are as bad as they are away from home, it just puts a little bit of extra pressure on that home form. And I think if they don't get a result, it does make things seem a lot worse. And I think, we're just talking about results here. They need to start drawing games. I think firstly, to stop conceding goals away from home. But as I say, when you aren't winning at home, in what was I would have deemed a winnable fixture here. Millwall are still they're still going through the motions under Alex Neil. I know they got the first win against Luton, so confidence-wise, going to be much higher going into this one. But I think from Portsmouth's perspective, this was one where they could have taken the game to them a little bit more, Millwall that is, but they didn't. They did disappoint me a little bit. And I think that's probably, it's going to be a confidence thing. I know we mentioned it at the weekend show, but I think their confidence was impacted by it. I think they started slowly. They didn't really get at Millwall, as we know they can do it in their home games. So yeah, a lot of pressure being put on that, on Fratton Park, which is a problematic thing.
It is. They have got another home game coming up this weekend, Justin, but it is against Burnley. So a very, very tricky one, and Portsmouth could really do with getting something from that game, because after that they've got Sheffield United away. And as we mentioned, not a good mix with Sheffield United and Portsmouth's away form. But we did see a start in this game against Millwall, Justin, for Portsmouth's new defender Hayden Matthews, who they only signed the day before this game from Sydney FC. The 20-year-old reportedly moves for £1.2 million, which makes him the most expensive defender in Australian football. And this is the fourth time Pompey have signed a player from the A-League in the last year and a half. And it's quite interesting how championship teams are exploring different markets, Justin. And here we have Pompey looking down under.
Yeah, I like it. Obviously, they've brought in Kusan Yengi, Thomas Waddingham's coming in as well this window. There's another one whose name escapes me, but it's good to see clubs are exploring other markets. I think it's a result of several things, really. Scouting networks, I think, do follow trends, importantly. I think relationships are developed with, let's say, external parties in countries. So it helps, Portsmouth have clearly got one in Australia. If you go back years and years, Reading had a really productive one in Ireland in the 2000s, like Kevin Doyle, Shane Long, Stephen Hunt.
Preston
Brentford
had a good Irish spell as well, didn't they?
Exactly. Brentford with Denmark, Brighton in South America is a recent example. So that's one reason. I think as well, importantly, signing players in the UK or UK-based players is just ridiculous. Cost of players over here is mad, which is why you see clubs dipping into Scandinavia, in France. I see it as a positive. Clubs do have to do things differently due to economics, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Just everything you said there was absolutely spot on. I think with championship clubs having more money than ever before, I think other clubs are wary of that, and that's why clubs have to be extra clever with how they're going about it. We've seen loads of players signed from Scandinavia, in particular this window. And we were discussing in the summer about how clubs were looking towards Japan, even, for players. So it's no surprise to see Portsmouth going for players from Australia. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see even more obscure markets being explored in the coming years. So yeah, it's very interesting. I find it very interesting as a championship neutral, looking at where clubs are looking for new signings, and this is just a latest example of it. Let's talk about some news then from across the Champo in the past few days. And Chris Wilder has signed a new 2.5-year deal at Sheffield United. His previous contract was set to expire at the end of this season. It's with the Blades sat second in the Championship, 2 points behind Leeds United. And with what he's done this season, he more than deserves a new deal, doesn't he, Justin?
Yeah, definitely deserves a new deal. He's done really well in redeveloping the club, I think is the term that I would use. A club that I think had lost its way a little bit. It was rudderless, obviously, with the ownership situation being up for sale for the best part of 3 years. Coming in and out of the Premier League as well, bouncing between the two leagues. New owners have come in, and now they've got a long-term option in place in Wilder, and someone who knows the club, someone who loves the club, someone who believes in the club, someone who the fans believe in as well, someone who has proved a lot of doubters wrong, including us, over the past 6 or 7 months. So I think it's really important to have that long-term option in place. And as I say, from a Chris Wilder point of view, he's more than deserved it, because he's had to create a new identity within the club. He's had to transition the changing of the old guard with older players going out and having to basically sign a new squad. So yeah, he's done a really good job in the circumstances he's been dealt with, and they could well be going into the Premier League again this season, all being well for them. So yeah, definitely deserving of it.
Yeah, I don't think that's debatable, really. The cynical part of me wonders whether they may regret giving him a new deal if he has a falling out with the new owners, because that has become very commonplace with Chris Wilder in recent years. But he definitely deserves this new chunky contract, and we've said it plenty of times in recent months. He's, as you say, just improved a lot of people wrong, especially us, and turning Sheffield United from one of the worst sides the Premier League has ever seen into the second, arguably first best team in the Championship this season is just ridiculous. And again, echoing what you're saying, Justin, obviously Blades fans love Wilder. He is one of them, isn't he? And has done more for this club than anyone else in the past 20 years. So keeping him in charge is the best thing to do, particularly with a new ownership coming in. It's a smart move from those new owners to show that they just recognise how important it is to the fans to have someone like Wilder around the place, because we've seen plenty of examples in recent years of clubs not necessarily recognising that, Justin.
Well, yeah, I think you got owners who can come in who just completely disregard a club's culture. And I think Chris Wilder personifies culture at Sheffield United. He's a bit of a salt of the earth type of character, and I think a lot of fans relate to that as well. He's a local lad, more importantly, and obviously the most the easiest thing to identify with him as well. And he just gets it. He gets the club's principles. He gets the club, from top to bottom, and it's really, really important. And I think, as you say, new owners can come in and they can completely disregard it, completely push it out of the picture. They could have. I think one of the fears that I had with new owners coming in, and I aired this in the summer, was them just wanting to go with a new option, completely freshen up the club. But actually, sometimes that can be a backwards move. We even saw that when the club appointed Jukanovic. His culture and understanding really does go a long way, of the club, that is, and it does go a long way. And Wilder, as we've said time and time again, personifies that.
While we're on the blades, Justin, Ipswich defender Harry Clarke is joining Sheffield United on loan for the rest of the season. He had been getting a lot of interest from other Championship clubs, particularly Sheffield Wednesday, but Sheffield United seem to have nicked him from their big rivals, which has irked a few Wednesday fans on social media from what I've seen. But what do you think about this, Justin?
I think it's a really good signing from Sheffield United and Chris Wilder. Harry Clarke's a very dependable, solid defender, and he's versatile as well. So he gives Wilder that option of being able to play as a right fullback. I think he was even deployed as a wing back under McKenna last season, despite his weaknesses going forwards. I would say he's not a Jayden Bogle, for example, but he's a very solid defensively minded player. And again, if Wilder wants to switch it up to a back three, I'm sure he can fit into that right hand side of a back three. So it gives him options. More importantly, I was never overly enamoured or overly impressed by Harry Clarke, but I do recognise he's a very solid, dependable player. A very I think a player who is probably perfect for Chris Wilder. He's a bit of a piss taker as well, which I think is also a positive from a player. Going for promotion, but I wouldn't say a shithouse. He just likes to take the piss a little bit.
Okay, I do remember him shithousing Leeds a bit after after Ipswich's promotion. So I suppose that is in the shithouse category. But yeah, I kind of get what you say, Justin, because it's quite hard to judge Ipswich players because they're working under Kieran McKenna, who on a number of occasions has made an average player look very good. Not saying Harry Clarke is average, I'm just not totally sure how good he is. But look, he played a fair bit for Ipswich last season, was sort of rotating with Axel Tuanzebe, wasn't he? Does that mean he necessarily strengthened Sheffield United's current squad? Not sure. He is still young, so he can develop. And it must be pointed out, they were hoping to sign John Joe Kenny on a permanent deal from Hertha Berlin, but that move seems to have stalled for some reason. So it seems like Clarke's there to fill a gap. Whether he's starting ahead of Alfie Gilchrist, I guess we'll see in the next few weeks, won't we? Sheffield United have also signed Hamza Chowdhury on loan from Leicester, so it's been a productive window for them so far, with just days to go, of course. Right, Justin, you ready to talk about some more transfer news?
Oof, I'm getting a bit full, but bit of gluttony, bit of transfer gluttony, come at me. Good.
Well, to make sure you're on your toes. 5 in 10. Name 5 players who have moved to a Championship club already this January.
Ben Barrington Diaz, the other one that Sheffield United have signed up front, Tom Cannon. I've fucked this already.
You really have. You really have. I mean, you still had about 4 seconds left when you dropped the F-bomb. As soon
as I dropped the ball after Ben Barrington Diaz, I was like, I'm done here.
I mean, what you could have done is just scroll through the running order of the show that's in front of you and just name some of those players. But that goes to show that maybe you're not on your toes. We'll give you a little break, Justin. Let's have a quick break. After that, we'll come back and talk about all the transfer biz from the past few days. Welcome back to the Second Tier Podcast, and we are now talking about all the transfer business that's happened across the Championship from the past few days. And we'll begin with Hull City, who look to have won the race to sign Aston Villa attacker Louie Barry. The 21-year-old scored 15 goals in 23 games for Stockport down in League One before being recalled earlier this month. He's been the subject of a lot of interest from across the Championship, but Ruben Sellers' side appear to have got their man. And what a statement move this is, Justin.
Yeah, it's a massive, massive statement move. And again, I like the business that Ruben Sellers is doing. I think Hull have been guilty of over relying, I would say, on agents far too often, bringing players from overseas who take time to develop, who take time to adapt to a new league. Whereas Ruben Sellers is picking players who either have experience playing in the Championship or have got a lot of potential coming. They understand the leagues, etc., and the culture of being in the country and whatnot. I think that's a big thing, especially when you're recruiting in January. I think Louie Barry just fits the bill. And again, that attacking quality that Louie Barry is bringing and his ability to turn games on their head by doing something spectacular, I think is a real edge. And Hull have assembled a really, really tidy squad. Obviously, we have to temper expectations a little bit because Hull did exactly the same thing where they had a very good window this time last year and it didn't quite flow as we wanted. And obviously Hull are in a bit more precarious position this season. But all you can say is, the board have done their bit, the recruitment team have done their bit, Ruben Sellers has done his bit. Let's see how it gets on.
Yeah, well, he's been the most sought-after player in the Championship this January, hasn't he? Every January there seems to be one player who is linked with just about everyone. And this time around it was Louie Barry. And he was being linked with clubs higher up the table than Hull are right now as well, wasn't he? So it's a thrilling move, but you just have to look at his numbers and some of his goals for Stockport. Flipping heck. He was clearly way too good for League One. And so it's very exciting to see now what he can do at Championship level. And got to be said, Hull needed more firepower because of how many injuries they've had this season. And even though they've signed extremely well this Jan, they probably could have done with at least one more. And this is some way to fill that gap because I am just so excited to see how he does at this level in this Hull team under Ruben Sellers, Justin.
Yeah, and I think the key variable to consider in this move is Ruben Sellers and his ability to get the best out of young players. And I think Louie Barry does have a point to prove because I think he burst onto the scene for Villa, didn't he, when he scored the winner against Liverpool in the League Cup a few years ago. And obviously there's that his time at Barcelona. So there's a lot there from Louie Barry, and he's had to cut his cloth a little bit by dropping into the lower leagues with Stockport in loan spells and whatnot. So he's coming into the Championship with a lot of expectation. The amount of clubs that have been linked with him, Derby missed out on him, for example. Middlesbrough as well were linked. Yeah, you're all right. He's a very sought-after player, but I think the key man here is Ruben Sellers and his qualities, his know-how of getting the very best out of players. And I think Louie Barry is in a good place to develop under a good manager to develop as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very, very exciting, just as a neutral, to see what Louie Barry does at Championship level. Let's go to Swansea, Justin, where their captain Matt Grimes appears to be on his way out of the club. Wales Online say the Swans are resigned to losing him this window, with Coventry set to sign the midfielder. He's the 7th longest serving Championship player at their current club, having made 333 appearances since moving to South Wales in 2015. And I've got to say, Justin, this has really caught fire in the past few days, hasn't it? And it's a move I never saw coming this January.
I don't think anybody saw it coming, did they? Swansea fans were a bit surprised, but I think that the majority of responses I've seen are, they're quite thankful for his time and his service, because I think on numerous occasions Matt Grimes could have easily gone to another club, but what a coup for Coventry this could be. It could be a huge signing if he comes in. And again, just him moving in January again is a bit of a surprise. But the fact that a player who's been at a club for such a long time and been so consistent. I think I saw a stat that he's only missed a handful of games over his time at Swansea, which is just incredible.
Since he got relegated, he's missed like something ridiculous, like 5 games. Yeah. It's absolutely obscene.
It's absolutely bonkers for a player not only to avoid injuries in the modern game like that, just picking up a odd car strain, etc. Suspensions, anything like that. It's just absolutely bonkers. But what a quality player. He's a player who can dictate play. He can really set a tempo of a team. And I think if you're an in possession team who wants to spend time on the ball, I'm surprised more clubs haven't dipped in for Matt Grimes, whether or not values have been difficult, but it's another story. But this would be a great signing for Coventry and a great loss for Swansea at a terrible time for them.
A huge loss for Swansea, Justin. I will just correct myself. He's actually only missed 4 games since Swansea got relegated from the Premier League in 2018. It's absolutely mad. But to make this move even more bizarre, he only signed a new contract in August. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really sure what's happened here. For your for your captain to turn around and say he wants to talk to another club, and not just any captain here, we're talking about Matt Grimes, who is essentially Mr. Swansea City at this stage, isn't it? It's an incredible turn of events. I mean, got to be said, to lose him to Coventry as well, I don't mean that with any disrespect. What I mean by that is it's not like it's Leeds, Sheffield United, Burnley, etc. I think he turned down a move to Fulham a couple of years ago. I could understand it more if it was one of those big clubs fighting right at the top of the table. But right now, it's just another mid-table side. So I can only imagine something's cracked off behind the scenes here. And with that being said, it's turned into quite a disastrous January for Swansea. Set to lose your captain and best player, their best defender in Harry Darling. Looks like he could be on his way out as well. They've gone from flirting with the playoffs to 7 losses in 10. And that's led to Luke Williams being under massive pressure from Swansea fans who have seemingly turned on him. It's been a very messy few weeks for everyone involved at Swansea City, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think what's important to point out is I wouldn't want to point the blame or point the finger at the current owners and the current board and Luke Williams. Luke Williams has got to deal with whatever hand he's given. And he's in a difficult situation because, as you say, he could lose his captain.
I will point out, though, Justin, Swansea fans will probably be screaming at their speakers right now for that, because Luke Williams obviously didn't help himself with the West Brom saga, where he's been linked with a job and didn't shut down those links as much as Swansea fans would have liked. And the new board have come in. Still yet to appoint a sporting director, since they've been there for a fair bit now. Not a long time by any means, but they've been there for a fair bit. So Swansea fans aren't happy with not just the manager, but how the club's been run either with these new owners. It's been a rocky start.
It has been a rocky start, but you've got to understand what they're taking over. It was a club that was ambitionless. It was directionless, and they had no backup plan for anything. You know, the managers, going from sort of Graham Potter to Steve Cooper to Russell Martin to Michael Duff, etc. You know, these scenarios they put themselves in isn't good continuity planning, and that'll be the same with the playing staff as well. It'll be the same with the players. In addition to that, we're not seeing as many players come through the academy as we previously have done in previous years. Again, I would point the finger at the previous owners for that, for under investing in the club as a whole. And I think the new board are just trying to sweep things up and pick things up as quickly as they can. And I think when you're trying to appoint a sporting director and a new process and everything that's new, from my own point of view, it's a very difficult thing to ground very quickly. So sometimes you've got to take the rough with the smooth. And you are right about Luke Williams. There's some bad PR from him, which isn't going to help his corner. But I think with the new owners, I think that from my point of view, I'm not a fan. I would grant them a little bit of leeway, if you like. But I know that's not going to be the case, and it's absolutely fine to feel what you need to feel. But I would point the finger at the previous owners, not the current ones.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but it is funny how quickly things can turn in the Championship, isn't it? Because, as I say, it looked like it was shaping up to be a promising end to the season for Swansea, with them looking like they were on an upwards trajectory, new owners, and what's instead happened is all this. It's turned very quickly, and in some ways been a bit of a masterclass in self-harm this January. Let's move on to Luton Town, though, Justin, who spent a reported £3 million on Thelo Aasgaard from Wigan. The 22-year-old midfielder scored 8 goals in League One this season. A move which came a bit out of the blue. I didn't see many reports of it happening beforehand, but he's someone who's been constantly linked with a move to the Championship for a long time, hasn't he?
Probably for the last 4 years, to be honest, because he's always been there or thereabouts for Wigan for a long time, and he survived the cull of administration as well, and really owned his place at Wigan. He's a player that I've had on my radar for a long time because he's got a penchant for the spectacular fairly often. He's going to add some much needed quality in that final third for Luton. You know, there's a lot of burden on T.S. Chong because for some reason the board decided not to replace star quality in Ross Barkley in any way, shape or form. I'm not saying Thelo Aasgaard's going to be that remedy because he's nowhere near the quality Ross Barkley had in the Premier League, obviously, but you've got a player there who's growing, who's developing, who's on an upward trajectory, which is much needed. And I think dipping the hands in the pockets for £3 million, still good investment for a 22-year-old who's scoring a lot of goals in League One.
Yeah, well, Wigan fans are absolutely gutted to lose him. Many of them think he should be playing for a team much higher than where Luton currently are.
Bottom 3 team.
Well, yeah, it's not a massive jump, that really, is it? I think he's definitely got a lot of promise. He loves getting forward. A massive goal threat from midfield. As I say, 8 goals this season. He's had the 4th most shots in League One. He seems quite a raw player to me. You look at his underlying numbers, he isn't exactly excelling in other areas an attacking midfielder should be at League One level. I'm also not entirely sure he fits the mould of your traditional Luton Town midfielder. You know, industry, runs his socks off, etc. So, yeah, I'm not sure about this one. There's definitely a player there. I think that's undeniable, but it seems as if there's work to be done with him to make him the final product. But by all means, prove me wrong, Theo. Luton have also signed Cal Naismith. Justin, re-signed. The 32-year-old's rejoined Luton on loan from Bristol City for the remainder of the season. He won Luton's Player of the Season award in his only full season at Kenilworth Road before moving to Ashton Gate in 2022. Bit of a weird one, Justin.
I do. I think it's an important signing because I think he brings something that Luton lack, which is leadership. I think he brings leadership. He brings quality. He knows the club inside and out. Yes, he's on the the other end of his career, but I can't recall Cal Naismith having too many bad games for Luton, and that's what they need. They need someone who's going to come in who gets it, who just gets it. And I think him being available at this time is perfect for Luton. So I think it's a good signing. Whether or not he plays a lot of games is another story. That being said, their defence is absolutely woeful. So I think, even trying to think, Chris Coyne could get in, despite him being in his 50s and playing for Luton back in the mid-2000s.
Good to hear him mention. I know Luton have been left a bit short on defenders at various stages this season, but he's a 32-year-old who only started 2 games at Bristol City this season. The answer...
He's an upgrade on Eric Pietas, though, isn't he?
Well, he's gone now anyway, isn't he? So I'm not sure with this one. I think it's probably a dressing room signing, isn't it? Someone to help boost morale, and Lord knows Luton needs someone like that right now. So why not? I guess it's just a bit strange that Luton were in the Premier League last season, now having to rely on getting old players back who aren't playing for mid-table championship sides. It's a bit strange. Middlesbrough, they've signed goalkeeper Mark Travers on loan until the rest of the season. It's a straight loan from Bournemouth with no option to buy. It comes after injuries to both Seny Dieng and Sol Bryn, which has left Borough playing their third-choice keeper, Tom Glover, for the last few weeks. And we've always been fans of Mark Travers, Justin, haven't we? He's a top keeper.
He is. I think he's quite unlucky. Again, you've got Marek Rodak at Fulham is another one where the clubs that they've come down with, i.e. Fulham and Bournemouth, have used him heavily in the Championship, but they've never been given a full chance in the Premier League. And there's several reasons for that, but I rate Mark Travers very, very highly. It was incredible for Bournemouth in the season they went up under Scott Parker. Has had flashes of brilliance in the Premier League when given the chance, and obviously was very steady at Stoke last season when on loan before getting recalled. I think it's a really good signing. He's quite easily the best keeper in that squad now. No disrespect to Seny Dieng or Sol Bryn. Mark Travers is miles ahead of them, and Tom Glover. Mark Travers is miles ahead of them, but with their injuries, he's clearly going to start, and I think that's a very, very good thing for Borough because they concede a lot of chances. They need a good keeper to stop them. Some of their goalkeeping has been underperforming, to say the very least, this season.
Yes, to say the very least. Yeah, whenever I've seen Mark Travers at this level, I've always thought he's good enough to be a Premier League keeper. He has played a handful of games this season for Bournemouth, but he's been kept out the side by the man who is literally the most expensive goalkeeper of all time. So I suppose that's understandable. To be honest, I'd like to see him get a permanent move away from Bournemouth to really see how he progresses at another club. But ultimately, if Bournemouth are loaning him out with no option to buy, they clearly rate him highly and think he still has the potential to play for them in the Prem. For Borough, though, this move was made necessary after Seny Dieng's injury, and I agree with you, Justin. I think they've ended up with a keeper who's better than Seny Dieng, so it's a top signing. And you look at this Borough team now and the business they've done this January, it's getting really quite difficult to pick holes in this team on paper.
Well, yeah, I think this is a frustrating thing, and it's something that I've alluded to. I'm not trying to sort of change the narrative of Michael Carrick, but if he doesn't get this team in the top 6, I would be asking some serious questions, whether he's the right man to take Borough going forwards, because I can't pick too many faults with it, if any faults really. They've got so much attacking quality. They've got some lovely balance and blend in their midfield. Defence maybe is a bit, it's not the best defence in the league, but there's a really nice balance of good solid pros and players who are comfortable with the ball at the feet. And then goalkeeping wise, that was probably their only big weakness, which they've now alleviated. So yeah, it puts Michael Carrick under pressure to get that team in the top 6. So yeah, proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can really disagree with you on that, Justin. Speaking of Middlesbrough, they've let defender Matt Clarke go back to Derby County on a permanent deal. He had back-to-back loan spells at Pride Park between 2019 and 2021, even winning their Player of the Season award in his first season. Oh, Justin, I love Matt Clarke. I think he is an excellent defender. I'm surprised at how Michael Carrick just doesn't seem to fancy him at Middlesbrough, or didn't seem to fancy him, because he was sublime for them at the end of last season. Had a great start to this season as well before getting injured, and just seems to have lost his place in the team after that. But it's also said that Carrick prefers other defenders at Borough who are better when it comes to having the ball at their feet, which is fine. So if that's the case, it makes sense for all parties, particularly when they want to lower the wage bill as well. But for Derby, I think it's a cracking signing. I honestly think this is such a good signing for Derby. I may even go as far to say my signing of the January window so far, Justin, because it might not be the most expensive, or it might not be the one which grabs all the headlines, but in terms of the quality of player Derby are getting, I think it's a tremendous signing.
I think, yeah, when you cross the quality of player that Derby are getting with probably what they're paying for him, I've seen fees in the region of 200,000 to 600,000, which again is very, very cheap, but the fees undisclosed, so we'll never know. He's only on a contract till the end of the season, which I find really bizarre, really, really bizarre. But Derby need a good defender coming in between now and the end of the season, so he fits that bill. But yeah, I think if you're fourth choice at Borough, and he's probably on a decent whack as well, they're going to probably try and move him on. I know they've been trying to get George Edmondson in permanently. So yeah, I think Borough are well equipped. Derby get a good player. Is it the signing of the window? I don't think so. I think Matt Clarke's injury history of the last 2 or 3 years worries me a little bit, because Derby need players between now and the end of the season, because Cashin's likely to leave for Brighton. And Curtis Nelson's out for the season. Nat Phillips is currently injured, and Craig Forsyth is a 35-year-old left back who has bionic knees. So yeah, they need fit players, and Matt Clarke, good player, but he's not the Matt Clarke of 5 years ago, if you like.
I will point out the rumours are that if Cashin does leave, it will be with a loan back to Derby. So he should hopefully be at Derby for the remainder of the season, whatever the case. But I get what you're saying, Justin. He is 28 now. He's no longer the bright young prospect he was back in his Portsmouth days, and injuries have really impacted his career. I mean, he missed over a year because of a back problem, didn't he? And that's probably why Derby have only given him a contract until the end of the season. But it's sort of like an acid test kind of thing, isn't it? Just to see whether he can play every game for the remainder of the season for Derby, and then they go from there and offer him a new contract. Plus, if they do get relegated to League One, they probably don't want someone with his wages playing at that level. So I think that's why I think this makes so much sense for Derby. And considering we're talking about a guy here who shone so brightly in a team as good as Middlesbrough's last season, for a team like Derby who are fighting to stay up, I think it's a great pickup.
Yeah, I think I'll just add it. I would argue, probably the other side of the coin, play devil's advocate. I think the contract to the end of the season might have been driven by his side, because again, the risk of Derby going down is huge. The other observation I'll make is completely not related to football, but Matt Clarke always looks like he said something that upset him. Yeah.
He's very much in the Gabriel Jesus category in that, isn't he? Always looks a bit surprised as well.
Yeah, surprised, but in a sad way.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. Cardiff have signed Ajax midfielder Sivert Mannsverk on loan. The 22-year-old Norwegian moved to Holland in 2023 for £5 million after standing out for Molde. But injuries have meant he's only featured twice in the league for Ajax this season. Probably one which won't get spotted by many outside of Cardiff, Justin, but I wanted to bring this one to the table because it seems interesting. First of all, as I say, only moved for £5 million. I say only moved for £5 million. Moved for £5 million only in 2023. And he was named the Breakthrough Player of the Year in the Norwegian top flight a couple of years ago. So one to keep an eye on, I would say.
I like this signing. It's purely Football Manager related. He's an FM or an ex-FM wonder kid. He's on that wonder kid list of years gone by. They've got him and Rocco Simic now. Obviously, Rocco Simic is out on loan. It's disappointing. I think bring him back, then so the FM players will be salivating. I do think it's an exciting signing on paper. I do like him. His profile is one of a technical quality with energy and robustness, which is, I think, is firstly very important for Cardiff. There's more mobility, but again, more importantly, there's more quality there if he stays fit. I think that's something that they do lack is presence and goal threat from midfield, and a little bit more creativity and dimension from midfield, which, if Mannsverk can pick up form and stave off injuries, he will hopefully bring that to the table.
Yeah, if he staves off injuries, which is the big thing here, because, as I say, he's really, really struggled with injuries at Ajax, which is why he's now having to go out on loan to Cardiff. It's going to be interesting to see how that midfield does shape up for Cardiff, because Callum Chambers has been superb since stepping into the middle of the park. Alex Robertson's a fantastic player, so I assume Sivertson will be, Sivert Mannsverk, will be stepping in for Joe Rules, which looks a really nice blend on paper. Whether it actually works out or not is another thing. We were saying this at the top of the show, Justin. Sheffield Wednesday don't need to worry about losing Josh Windass to Santos this transfer window now, because they've signed Neymar instead. A sentence I didn't expect to be saying, but it is 2025. Yeah, the Brazilian side had been linked with a move for him earlier in the window, but instead they've settled for the most expensive player in the history of football instead, which is fine. This must be one of the most random transfer rumours of all time. It's so weird.
It's fucking weird. Do you want me to make it weirder? I read a story that Santos created an AI voice clipping of Pele to convince Neymar to rejoin Santos, which apparently moved Neymar's dad to tears. But also, do you think, on the other side of that, do you think to get Windass to stay, that Sheffield Wednesday created an AI voice clip of Lee Bullen or Gary Hooper to convince him to stay?
I mean, I will point out, Lee Bullen and Gary Hooper are both alive, so they don't need
just
to.
Drop a voicemail.
Don't need to do that. But yeah, it would be maybe that's the case. I just don't know. But yeah, I genuinely cannot think. I was trying to come up with some examples of the weirdest transfer rumours I can remember in the time that we've been doing this podcast, but I don't think any of them come close to being as weird as this, particularly with the Neymar aspect, which has just made it so much more strange. But I don't hate it, Justin. I want to see more things like this, please.
Absolutely. Not only does it put the championship on the map, but also just how random the link is. Because it's not like Josh Windass. No disrespect to him. He's not like he's a 25-year-old. Technical Spaniard who's rising and getting a lot of plaudits. He's 30 years old. He's English, and he's in the twilight of his career. It's just one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I will point out the reason why this link has come up, reportedly anyway, is because Santos are now managed by, is it Pedro Caixinha? The former Rangers manager who Josh Windass used to play with, play under, I should say.
This whole thing makes sense, because there's a video of him standing in a bush having a go at Rangers fans, and he's weird. He's weird.
I need to see this.
This link's weird. This AI video of Pele is weird. This whole story is weird, and it's led by the weird manager that Pedro Caixinha is.
Good stuff all around. And we'll finish off with some Sheffield Wednesday news, Justin, because we've got news involving one of the greatest cult heroes in Championship history, Atdhe Nuhiu. He has been named as the new assistant manager of the Kosovan national team, which I will also put in the category of things I love to see, Justin.
Yes, and talking about AI videos, he's another one who could have been sending it to Josh Windass.
Again, still alive.
You know what I mean? It's great to see. Nuhiu's always reminded me, I don't know why, just sort of thought came over me. He just looks like a bad guy from a Disney film. But I imagine he's just I imagine he gives great hugs, and he's nothing of the sort. I imagine he's just a lovely guy. You know, he's going to be menacing because of the size of him on the touchline, but I reckon he's good cop.
Yeah. Well, it'd be a nice change of pace if he is good cop, considering he's 6'6".
Exactly.
He must be the most intimidating assistant manager in the history of football, mustn't he? But yeah, you're absolutely right. Just now, I do remember. I'm trying to remember when this was now. Barry Bannon was tipping Nuhiu to be a top manager at some point.
Yeah, I
can't remember whenabouts this was, but this goes to show that there is some proof in the pudding. So let's see how Kosovo get on when Nuhiu's guiding them to the World Cup or something like that.
Just win the World Cup.
Be the highest the World Cup trophy has ever been lifted, with Nuhiu lifting it into the heavens. It'd be great stuff, won't it? But there we go, ladies and gents. This has been a news roundup of everything cracking off across the Championship from the past few days. And we'll, of course, be back again tomorrow with the previous show brought to you by SBK as we make some bloody predictions ahead of the weekend. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.